Dr. Collins History Channel.
Jews and Persians, Part 1. Nebuchadnezzar. What past events led to the enduring friendship between Jews and Persians? This is Part 1 in a series which examines those ancient events. The story begins in Babylon. First emancipated from the Assyrians in 626 BC by King Nabopolassar, Babylon eventually defeated the Assyrian Empire in coalition with the Medes in 612 BC. To seal this alliance, Nabopolassar's son, Nebuchadnezzar, had married a Median princess called Ametis. The Medes went on to devastate the cities of the Assyrian heartland and slaughter the people in a way that shocked the Babylonians, who, despite their political and regional differences, shared a common language and culture with the Assyrians. Babylon began to absorb the territory of the Assyrians, whose survivors fell back to the northern city of Haran. But this was taken in 609 BC. To consolidate their successes, Nebuchadnezzar led the Babylonian army to victory at the Battle of Carchemish in 605 BC against the remaining Assyrian forces allied with the Egyptian army of Necho II. Succeeding to his father's throne in that same year as Nebuchadnezzar II, he consolidated the successes of his father and turned Babylon into a beautiful and powerful city, with an empire which stretched across the Middle East from the Persian Gulf to Anatolia and down to the Egyptian border, covering Israel, Syria, and all of Mesopotamia. Babylon had become the dominant power of the Near East. Back in 609 BC, Josiah, the righteous king of Judah, had foolishly intercepted Necho's army at Megiddo, only to be killed. Jerusalem lost its independence to the Egyptians, who installed Jehoiakim as their puppet ruler. Following their victory over Egypt, the Babylonians then claimed tribute and hostages from Jerusalem. Along with treasures from the Temple of Solomon, aristocratic young men like Daniel were taken to Babylon to be trained to serve the empire. In 597 BC, Nebuchadnezzar came again, and this time deported the royal family and thousands of the leading citizens, court officials, warriors, and craftsmen, not to mention additional treasures from the temple. In 588 BC, after rebelling against the Babylonians, the Judeans suffered a long siege, and in July 586 were totally defeated. Nebuchadnezzar demolished the walls, burned the palace, and destroyed the temple, carrying off the last valuable treasures and deporting many of the surviving inhabitants. Only the poor rural population was left. The prophet Jeremiah had warned the Judeans of their unfaithfulness and injustice, and that Babylon was the instrument of God's judgment upon them. They would not be preserved because of the temple or because they were God's chosen people. Jerusalem would be destroyed and the people would be deported. However, Jeremiah also promised hope. Their exile would last 70 years, and then they would return to rebuild Jerusalem and the temple. Moreover, the Lord would make a new covenant with Israel. "This is the covenant I will make with the people of Israel after that time, declares the Lord. I will put my law in their minds and write it on their hearts. I will be their God, and they will be my people." As the Babylonian soldiers entered Jerusalem, Nebuchadnezzar ordered his officials to find Jeremiah and treat him well. The Judeans in Babylonia. Around the year 2000, some clay Babylonian tablets came to light, which had been written at the time of the exile by Judeans living in Babylonia. Many of them referred to a city which has been approximately localized to 50 or 100 kilometers south and downriver from Babylon. The name of this city was Al-Yahuda, meaning the city of Judah. We have confirmation that they were Judeans because a large proportion of the names include a part of the name of the God of Israel, Yahu, Yama, or just Yah. The tablets were Babylonian format legal documents written in the Akkadian language and in cuneiform script. This shows that these exiles were well integrated into the Babylonian culture as their prophet Jeremiah had advised them to be. However, they had been allowed to stay together and maintain their family connections. Having said that, they were treated as serfs, sent to the countryside to cultivate land, and taxed by the Babylonian authorities. According to the documents, some families succeeded better than others. Around 200 of these tablets have appeared through private collectors, and unfortunately the place and conditions of discovery are unknown. The earliest tablet dates from 572 BC, only 14 years after the destruction of Jerusalem, and they continue into the Persian period up until 477 BC. This really is an extraordinary confirmation of the Judean presence in Babylon, recorded shortly after the exile, and a confirmation that they had lost neither their cultural identity nor their devotion to Yahweh. One of the Judeans had been given the Babylonian name Belshazzar, meaning Lord protect the king, the Lord referring to Marduk, the god of Babylon. However, this gentleman was still devoted to the God of Israel and changed his name to Yahushazar, Yahweh protect the king. Marduk, the god of Babylon, the god of order and creation. Marduk had always been a local Babylonian divinity, but with the rise of Babylon to dominance, he came to assume the role of the king of the gods and was cast in a key role in the creation of the world, as described in the Enuma Elish. The planet Jupiter was the heavenly manifestation of Marduk in the night sky, and the Babylonians sought Marduk's will by tracing the planet's movements through the heavens. This is the origin of astrology, interpreting the planets and stars as celestial signs through which the gods reveal their intentions for events on earth. At the beginning of the year, just after the spring equinox, the Babylonians celebrated Akitu, a festival of 11 days honoring Marduk and his consort. When the Assyrians devastated Babylon in 689 BC and stole the statue of Marduk, the festival could not take place. The second most important divinity, Nabu, god of wisdom, writing, and destiny, the son of Marduk, also had to be present at the festival, coming from Borsippa, 20 kilometers away. Without him, the festival could not take place either. At one point in the ceremonies, the king of Babylon had to appear before the statue of Marduk. The high priest removed the king's scepter, the royal circlet, and sword, and laid them before the statue of Marduk. The priest returned to the king, struck him on the cheek, and then dragged him before Marduk, where the king bowed and gave an account of his actions. Not only that he had served Marduk well, but that he hadn't humiliated his people. The priest then prayed for the king, returned his symbols of authority, but the humiliation was not finished. The priest hit him in the face again, and this time very hard. It was a good sign if the king cried. The king would then take the hand of Marduk, and Marduk would announce his plans for the year. They would mount a chariot together to lead a great procession of gods, priests, dignitaries, and singers and dancers. The king and Marduk would then be taken by boat to spend time together in a special Akitu temple before returning the next day to Babylon, where Marduk addressed the people. Marduk returned to his temple, the other gods to theirs. Marduk's supremacy was reaffirmed, the king's authority was validated, and the city was guaranteed divine favor. All was well. The humbling of Nebuchadnezzar. Babylonian royal inscriptions tended to focus more on building than military achievements, and included significant boasting. Unsurprisingly, the largest number of building inscriptions that have been found belong to Nebuchadnezzar II. As we know, Nebuchadnezzar II initiated a program of architectural extravagance which produced the ancient city, which is known today. His work included the restoration of numerous temples, including Ezagil, the Temple of Marduk, the Ziggurat of Marduk, the north and south palaces, the processional way, and the resplendent gate of Ashtar, covered with blue and yellow glazed bricks, depicting the bull of the god Adad and the dragon of Marduk. This fits with the astonishing account in chapter 4 of the book of Daniel. As the king was walking on the roof of the royal palace of Babylon, he said, "Is not this the great Babylon I have built as the royal residence by my mighty power and for the glory of my majesty?" Even as the words were on his lips, a voice came from heaven. "This is what is decreed for you, King Nebuchadnezzar. Your royal authority has been taken from you." So Nebuchadnezzar was driven away from people and became like an animal with long hair and long nails and eating grass, until after a certain time he would acknowledge that the Most High rules over the kingdom of men and gives it to whomsoever he pleases. This judgment neither concerned his devotion to the Babylonian gods nor any possible injustices he might have committed. It was a judgment of his pride. He had been granted success, but he thought it was his own doing, and he thought the projects he had initiated and organized should bring glory to himself. But he was, alas, totally mistaken about his human condition and his dependence on God. He may well have attended the Akitu festival many times and played the submissive role. He may have prayed to Marduk and the other gods of Babylon, but he did not know the God of heaven. At the end of his ordeal, Nebuchadnezzar lifted his eyes to heaven, and his understanding returned. He praised the Most High God, on whom he and his kingdom were dependent. He was re-established in his kingdom, and surpassing greatness was added to him. Nebuchadnezzar II reigned for 43 years and died at the age of around 80 years old in 562 BC. He is the most famous foreign king in the Bible, appearing in over 120 verses in 9 books of the Old Testament, and he is considered by historians as one of the greatest kings of Mesopotamia. He was succeeded by his son Amel-Marduk. In the next video, we will see how the successors of Nebuchadnezzar led to the decline of Babylon, its capture by King Cyrus of Persia, and finally to the liberation of the Jews.